So we have the pleasure to have Julij Fajt with us. Maybe you saw his film Boys and Girls at the Arlecchino yesterday. And we have also Peter Bagrov, who has selected the films that we are seeing this week at the Cinema Lumière, Sala Scorsese. And I want to thank Anna Malghina for helping us translating for Mr. Fajt. And also she did all the subtitles of the films in the Scorsese. Thank you, and have a nice lecture.
So, good afternoon, everybody. I will try not to talk much. I will do the introduction and then ask questions, and I encourage all of you to ask questions. I assume most of you have seen yesterday's film, Мальчик и девочка, Boy and Girl. Just a few words about Julij Fajt. He was born in a cinematic family. His father was a silent film star, one of the, what you may call, the men you love to hate for Russian cinema, Andrei Fajt. And he was a pupil of Lev Kuleshov, among others. Was active all the way through the 70s until his death, mostly playing villains. Julij himself graduated from VGIK, the Moscow State Film School, Film University, which is the main film university in the Soviet Union. And it was a very famous class. The teacher, the mentor, was Mikhail Rom, a famous film director who started back in the silent era and was a leading director of the Stalinist era, and then became one of the main directors of the Thaw. And his film, Ordinary Fascism, Обыкновенный Fascism, is one of the most important events of the Russian cinema of the Thaw. And it was a famous class, a very productive one. Among them are two very big names for Russian cinema, which are, although not quite as well known outside of the country. It is Alexander Mitta, a film director who is still, well, not active as a director, but still quite around. Vasily Shukshin, who passed away as a relatively young man, who was not only a, I would say, cult director in Russia, but also a very important writer. And a name which needs no introduction, Andrei Tarkovsky. This is all one class, to which Julij also belonged. His first film, a short film, student work called Tramvai v другие города, A Tram to Other Cities, was first supervised by Boris Barnett, another name which needs no introduction, and later Barnett decided it more ethical to step aside and to make Mikhail Rom the artistic, supervisor of the film. And then he ended up at Lenfilm, where he made two features. One is called Когда фронт в обороне, When the Front is in Defense. And another one is Boy and Girl, the film which you saw yesterday. And this is where I step aside, and the floor is yours.
Упомянули моего отца. Он действительно был очень востребованным актером в немом кино, и удивительно, что сумел перейти так называемый звуковой барьер. Очень много актеров немого кино.
I'm not a very good translator, so I need short periods. My father was mentioned, and it is true that he was a silent film actor, I would add a silent film star. And what is remarkable, he is one of those silent film stars who managed to go through the sound barrier and still was active in the sound era as well.
Он сумел перейти этот звуковой барьер и остаться в профессии, в кино на всю оставшуюся жизнь. Очень много актеров немого кино ушли, не справившись с новыми задачами.
So he managed to stay in cinema until the end of his life, because many actors of this generation had to leave because they did not, fill the new demands. They didn't understand what was the new language.
Очень часто в кино актеров используют стандартно, штампованно. Он создал какой-то образ заметный, и это остается на всю его жизнь. Таких примеров много. Здесь шла картина Чапаев. Пострадавший был актер Бабочкин.
So what very often happens to actors is when they play a part and that is successful, then they become standardized and cliched film after film, and this is what happens to some very important actors, like the film which was shown on this festival several days ago, Chapayev, wonderfully played by Boris Babuchkin.
Мой отец играл всю жизнь мерзавцев, шпионов, предателей с характерным своим лицом, и только последняя роль, единственная в его жизни, главная, он сыграл простого крестьянина, что, в общем, получилось.
So my father all his life was playing scoundrels, spies, traitors, especially with his very exotic profile. He looked like a European, I can add. And only his very last part in film, he was playing a simple peasant, and this was a role which was really a success, an artistic success.
Мне бы хотелось, если здесь есть представитель, наверное, в Синематеке есть библиотека. Я издал в Москве книгу воспоминаний отца о своих коллегах, о мастерах, и отредактировал и собрал его воспоминания. Хотел бы передать эту книгу в библиотеку. Вот это мой отец.
I have published a book of my father's memoirs, collected all he wrote about his colleagues, about filmmakers he worked with, and since I assume there is a library here at the Cineteca, I would like to present this book to the library. У нас есть фотографии. We have some of the images. Maybe we should show something. So first of all, here are some of the stills from legendary films. A bit part. Do you see anything? Maybe could we dim maybe the lights a little bit? So that is a bit part in Battleship Potemkin, but he's playing. He's one of the few professional actors who is playing in the film. He's an officer who climbs upon a piano. The scene is so short it's easier to see him here in the stills, while hiding from the sailors. Another legendary. Sorry, that's not what I wanted to show.
Молодая гвардия.
Yes. So the young guard. He's playing one of the many Nazi officers he played. You see, I'm talking about the profile. And another legendary film. Boris Barnett's The Outskirts. He's playing a German officer again, and a rather bad one. And we have a clip. I would rather show maybe a clip from Великий Утешитель. The Great Consoler, a film by Lev Kuleshov, one of his teachers. Kuleshov's sound film, but what is important, it is also a parody on silent cinema. And you can see how brilliantly Andrei Fajt moves. He's playing this perfect American detective in the Wild West. So let me see, where are these seconds which we need? So 2 little fragments. Sorry. This is not him yet. This is Jimmy Valentine. It's an adaptation of O. Henry's story. Right. So he is mocking the way he played serious villains in this comedy.
В его время учили в ГИКе актеров в основном по системе Мейерхольда, биотехника вот это, вплоть до того, что все делалось на счет, 1, 2, 3, 4. Каждый жест что-то означал заранее. Рука повелительная, рука просящая. Только так и должны были действовать актеры. Что отец в книге абсолютно отрицает. Считает, что это неверно, потому что рука такая может означать все, что угодно в зависимости от характера и контекста.
So while he was taught in the 20s in the film school, he was mostly taught using the Vsevolod Meyerhold, the great Russian theatrical avant-garde director, system, the biomechanics, where every movement was counted, 1, 2, 3, 4, and every gesture had a very specific meaning. So if you raise your hand like this, you are ordering. If you're putting like this, you are asking for something or begging for something, and which my father did not really like. And in his book, he sort of makes fun of this system and said that it is completely wrong for an actor because there could be many connotations of just one simple gesture.
Теперь мне хотелось бы о своем мастере, учителе. Вообще отец мне разрешил идти в эту профессию, я и сам не очень стремился, только потому, что я попадал в этот год на прием именно к Рому, которого он уважал, одного из немногих, с кем ему приходилось работать.
Now I'd like to say a few words about my teacher, because when I enrolled in the same film school as my father later on, the only reason my father gave his consent is because this year, Mikhail Rom was the one who was supervising this class, and he was one of the few directors whom my father not only worked with, but really respected and loved.
Мы начали учиться у Рома в очень интересный момент его биографии. Это был перелом. 1954 год. Я думаю, вы представляете себе, что это значило для нашей страны. Так называемая оттепель начиналась.
We started studying with Rom in a very interesting period of his biography. It was 1954, as you may guess, a crucial moment in Russian Soviet history, the so-called the thaw, first year of the post-Stalinist era.
Ром, начавший с «Пышки», экранизации Мопассана, потом снимал в основном все-таки пропагандистские фильмы с совершенно определенной идеологией. В это время он очень резко изменился, причем изменился не только, так сказать, политически и этически, но и по форме, по профессии. Он стал по-другому снимать.
Mikhail Rom, who started by an adaptation of Maupassant's Boule de Suif, a classical French short story, later in the 30s and 40s mostly made propaganda films. And the time when we started studying with him was when he really changed, not only politically, not only ethically, but also, in the style and the form of his films.
И наблюдать за тем, как художник меняется и по-человечески, и профессионально, было очень интересно. И до сих пор мы, так сказать, анализируем этот процесс, как только очень талантливый человек мог так себя, так сказать, изменить и достать из себя что-то настоящее. Это были картины «9 дней одного года» и «Обыкновенный фашизм». Вот то, что он успел снять после перелома.
It was very interesting for us to observe how an artist changes, how he completely changes his his mentality, and how he let's say digs out from deep in his soul, in his brain, something which was hidden there, and he made two very important films, only two. One is the fiction film «9 дней одного года», 9 Days of 1 Year, and the non-fiction film «Обыкновенный фашизм», Ordinary Fascism. The two very important films of that period.
Ром набрал очень разнообразный курс специально для того, чтобы студенты учились друг у друга во многом, а не только у него и других преподавателей. И очень контрастные фигуры, такие как Шукшин и Тарковский, очень контрастные.
Our class was a very diverse one, and Rom's idea was that we should learn not only from our teachers, him and others, but from our classmates as well. This is why I would say that the principle was contrast, and such contrast figures as Andrei Tarkovsky and Vasily Shukshin, that is what was typical of our class.
Нормальная ситуация, когда из мастерской, где учатся 20-25 человек, заканчивает 15, выходят 3-4, которые остаются в профессии и продолжают работать режиссерами-постановщиками, так сказать, авторскими режиссерами-авторами фильмов.
The normal situation is when in a class out of 20-25 students, about 15 graduate, and only 3 or 4 remain in the profession as real directors, as auteurs.
Должен сказать, что те, кто стал особенно знаменитыми из моих однокашников, не были во время обучения, особенно в начале, какими-то лидерами и ярко выделяющимися. Правда, мне и до сих пор трудно сказать про моего друга Андрюшу Тарковского, так сказать, гений, великий. Для меня он замечательный профессионал, у которого есть свои слабые стороны и есть замечательные сильные стороны.
Among my famous classmates, the most famous ones were not leaders from the very beginning, especially in the first years. They didn't really stand out. And actually, even today, it's difficult for me to say about my close friend Andrei Tarkovsky that he is a genius, that he is a great director. I always considered him a very high-class professional who has some weak sides, but who has some remarkably strong sides.
Нам очень повезло, потому что в этот момент, когда мы заканчивали курс, кино советское очень расширялось. До этого бывали годы, когда вся страна делала 7 фильмов в год. Вся страна вместе со всеми республиками. В наш момент мы обязаны были сделать фильм на производстве, на студии. До этого иногда режиссеры защищались не пленкой, а бумагой. Рисовали фильм игровой и показывали, как он должен потом быть. Это была дипломная работа. Такое тоже случалось.
When we graduated, we were very, very lucky because the film industry was expanding. A few years before that, the whole country was making as little as 7 films a year for the whole country. When we graduated, our student works were made, were full-fledged films, those short ones, made in major film companies, on film stock with a professional cameraman, etc. Whereas some of people who graduated a few years before us, some of them, they had to draw their film on paper and to show how the film should look, rather than really make something.
О себе мне не хочется особенно говорить, если что вас интересует, спросите. Но я попал на Ленфильм, меня пригласили, студента почти что, только что защитившего диплом, пригласили на Ленфильм на большую работу. И в этот момент еще учились и заканчивали курсы, только начинали работать Алексей Герман, Панфилов, Авербах, то, что потом было, так сказать, лучшей частью нашего кинематографа.
I don't really want to talk about my own work. You can ask questions later on if you want to. But when I graduated and I made my first short student film, I was offered a job at Lenfilm, one of the major film companies in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg. And some of the best filmmakers in this company, and consequently the best filmmakers in the country, such as Alexei German and Gleb Panfilov and Ilya Averbach, were only students back then. Кстати, у нас есть фрагменты с трамвая, между прочим.
Ну, если хотите.
I would like to interfere here, and although Julij doesn't want to talk about
Я
his own
сделал
works,
дипломную работу по сценарию нашего любимого друга и известного сценариста Геннадия Шпаликова, который и с Хуциевым работал, и с Данелией работал. Это первая его работа, и моя тоже первая экранная работа, 20-минутный детский фильм «Трамвай в другие города».
So the student work I did was based on a screenplay by my very good friend, dear friend, Gennady Shpalikov, one of the leading filmmakers of the Thaw, who worked with Marlen Khutsiev. He is the scriptwriter, I should add, for I Am 20, Zastava Ilicha, one of the greatest Soviet films ever made. And with Georgy Danelia on the film I'm Walking Along Moscow, I Shagay po Moskvе. And I also want to add a very interesting director himself. He made a film called Long Happy Life, Долгая счастливая жизнь, his only directorial film. He died very young. And we made our first work, his first work and my first work, which was released theatrically as a short film for children, 20 minutes long, which is called A Tram to Other Cities, Tramvай в другие города. We will show you a clip. It is a story about two little boys, two 7-year-old boys, who decide late at night to run away from home and make an adventurous trip. And they take this trip on a tram, and this tram ends up on the shore of what they think is a sea, and which is basically a little pool. And they fall asleep in a sleeping bag, and there is a policeman whom they think chases them. He doesn't really. He just appears all the time everywhere. And so they wake up, and they see this policeman in the most exotic circumstances. Exotičeskие, я бы сказал, да. And it has very little dialogue. I will translate it simultaneously.
И ни один из них не предполагал, что их ждет на рассвете.
Look. We should drown his uniform. Without his uniform, he's not a policeman anymore. He couldn't do anything to us. Has no right to. And the horse? Should we drown it as well? Without the uniform, even the horse couldn't help him. What is this for? Food supplies. Is there anybody here? Our father is fishing and we're sleeping here. He's a fisherman, a sportsman. Is this your horse? Yes. Why do you need a gun? I'm a policeman. Interesting. Aren't you cold? Very, very cold. Was anybody passing by? Our father is sleeping and fishing and we're sleeping here. Can I hold a horse? Okay. What's his name? Armavir. Why so? There is such a city. Do you want to warm up? Okay. Do you want an apple horse? Yes, he does. Let him try one. Do you want an apple? Thank you. Children, stop. Don't make it worse. That's where we'll stop.
Вот благодаря этому диплому я был приглашен на Ленфильм. И сделал там 2 полнометражных картины. Первая такая военная картина, но так она и называлась «Фронт в обороне». То есть никаких боев, а быт, такой окопный быт армии.
So thanks to this film, and that's, by the way, the one which was supervised first by Barnett and then by Mikhail Rom, I ended up at Lenfilm and made 2 pictures there. The first one was a film about the war, while the front line is in the defense, but there were no battle scenes. It was the film about the everyday life in the trenches.
Фильм прошел достаточно успешно, и мне сразу практически предложили вторую картину по сценарию нашей писательницы, известной Пановой. И тут это было то, что меня особенно интересовало. Отношения очень молодых людей, первое чувство. Я сам был довольно молодой, вплоть до того, что я играл в футбол со святителями во время перерыва, что ужасно возмущало руководство студии. Авторитет падал.
So this film was rather successfully screened and received, and that's why I immediately received an offer to make a second picture. It was an adaptation of a screenplay by Vera Panova, a famous Soviet writer, and it was about the topic I was really interested in myself, about the relationship between very young people, about their first feelings. That didn't say love, that's important. I was interested in myself. I was myself very young, and as young that I was playing football with the crew, with the lighting department people, and I was criticized by the authorities of the studio for that, because this is not how a film director should behave.
Пожалуй, 3 личных качества определили дальнейшую достаточно трудную судьбу и фильма, и мою личную творческую. Я был молодой, я был наглый и упрямый. Сопротивлялся всякому. Конечно, в это время другая обстановка была, но некоторые ограничения существовали.
There were three personal qualities, peculiarities, which determined the fate of the film and my own rather difficult fate. I was young. Nugly is a very difficult word to translate. I'm always having trouble with this. Impudent, maybe. Young, impudent, and stubborn. And so I was, fighting with all the restrictions, and even though the times were liberal, there were quite a few of them still.
Я еще был очень неопытный, и поэтому взялся делать сценарий совершенно со своей точки зрения. Я уверен, что если режиссер берет готовый сценарий, он должен следовать тому, о чем написал, собственно, автор. Я же делал поперек автора, в противоположном почти что направлении, хотя ни одного слова не изменил в сценарии, но вы же понимаете, что важна интонация.
I was also very inexperienced, and that's why I started to adapt the screenplay from my own point of view. Later on, and nowadays, I think that if you start to make a film based on a good screenplay, you should really follow the main ideas of the screenplay. But back then, I was doing it, I would say, in the opposite direction of what the writer intended.
Собственно, картина была сначала хорошо принята, потом разразился скандал, ее довольно надолго закрыли. Я ее понемножку, из упрямства по чуть-чуть подправлял. Но тогда была характерная черта. Никто не имел права у нас без режиссера делать какие-то поправки. Сейчас продюсеры хозяева. В то время, я думаю, что это определялось тем, что деньги-то были государственные, их не жалко. Сняли картину и положили ее.
Right. So at first the film was well received by the authorities, by the censors, but then there was a big scandal. It was banned, and I was ordered to make some changes, and I made some changes, but only step by step, very stubbornly and very slowly. The good thing about those days was that no one had the right to change the picture without the consent of the film director, which is very difficult nowadays because the king is the producer. But back then, the money was state money, so nobody really cared if this money was spent, and then the film was shelved forever.
Если кто-то вчера видел фильм, мне, конечно, очень интересны какие-то соображения зрительские, потому что через полвека я тоже совершенно другими глазами смотрю. Во-первых, отстраненно, а во-вторых, просто другое восприятие совершенно. Я думаю, что мы можем, так сказать, перейти к вопросам, но по-любому из того, о чем мы говорили, или о чем вы хотите говорить.
So if someone saw the film yesterday, I would very much like to hear your opinions, because it's very interesting how the film is seen through different eyes 50 years later. Even I myself am watching this film very differently nowadays, from a side, so to say. So if there are any questions, or not only about the film, you're welcome to ask them. So are there any questions? Okay, I can show another clip which we saved, not from a great film. It's not a masterpiece, but it is interesting because it's the first work of Andrei Tarkovsky called The Killers. It's based on a famous short story by Ernest Hemingway. And Julij Fajt is starring in this film. You could see how in a film school, having, I don't know, a budget close to zero, they're trying to recreate America, and how the Russians are playing Americans. So Julij is playing the good waiter in a bar, and Vasily Shukshin, who would later become a great writer and a wonderful director, is playing another American who was involved in a gang and is about to be killed for that reason. Actually, no, before I show this just one little thing. Before I show a mature acting part by Julij, here is one he did as a... I saved it properly. This should be something better quality one. Anyway, sorry, it's not the best picture possible, but because it's from a magazine. But this is the shot from the unincluded and lost sequence of Ivan the Terrible. And we see Pavel Kadeshnikov, who is playing, well, the fool, the Tsar's cousin. And Yuli is the little boy, because this is the family which is about to be killed by the Oprichniki. So this is Yuli's first part in film in 1945. It is lost. We all have only this photo. And now I will show you the clip from Tarkovsky. There were even subtitles. That is not him yet. Right, so this is the very first steps of Tarkovsky. Well, so has anyone come up with any questions? Because we're a little bit running out of time, have about 5 minutes left. Yeah, well, maybe you in the front row.
Я могу по-русски или по-английски?
Лучше по-английски, чтобы аудитория понимала.
Okay, I have a general question, not about the film, but about, I don't know, maybe the process of study when you're studying how to make films. So, did you have access to the European cinema? Were you anyhow influenced by it? Yeah, so in general, could you see the films of Fellini or whatever? Did you know about what happened and what was happening in the European cinema at this time? Thank you.
Характерная черта нашего мастера и нашего курса, Ром был литературоцентричен. Он требовал от нас, во-первых, много прочитать хорошей литературы, действительно хорошей, и обязательно самим писать. Это входило, так сказать, в систему обучения. По поводу того, что мы видели, ну, во-первых, половина Феллини еще не существовала, даже большей части, еще не снято было. Но мы смотрели много. У меня, например, любимый период был французы 30-х годов. Клер, Карне.
So our teacher, Michael Rom, was literary centralized, so to say. So we were, the most important part of studying with him was to read as much as possible and to write. All of us, we had to write ourselves, write prose. And as for what we have seen, well, Fellini hasn't made more than half of his films yet by the mid-50s. But we had access to some of the films, mostly the old ones. And for example, my favorite era was the French 1930s, Marcel Carner, René Clair, and others.
Sure. No?
You said also about the contrast that you had like a big class of different peoples, and you had to learn from each other. I wanted to know more what were these things that you managed to learn from each other and not from the professor.
В принципе, даже такая была установка, в том числе и у Рома. Студенты должны учиться друг у друга, а не у мастера. Мастер дает общее какое-то понимание искусства, общее отношение к работе, к ценностям каким-то. Собственно, профессиональное обучение происходит между разными очень студентами. Вот это было существенно. И по выходу мы видим, вот Шукшин, которого вы сейчас увидели, это абсолютная противоположность Тарковскому, которого здесь не очень-то узнаешь по стилю, но кроме несколько удлиненных пауз. Но я, так сказать, люблю у него другое. Ну, если нужно сказать.
Да, может быть, потом еще. So, well, this was the main idea of Rome was that we basically learn everything from each other, and that the teacher only gives his general attitude, the general idea of what is art and how you sort of treat it. And well, even this is an example because we see in this main part Vasily Shukshin, and there was nobody in our class who was more polar opposite to Tarkovsky than Shukshin himself. And actually, you cannot really recognize Tarkovsky in this little film, except from the pauses, which are a little bit too extended. This is not quite what I like in his films, the most.
Мы подчеркнули друг у друга, во-первых, жизненный опыт. Я пришел прямо из школы с полным отсутствием жизненного опыта. Московский мальчик. Шукшин прошел хорошую школу уже жизненную. Тарковский учился в другом институте, потом перешел и побывал на работе у геологов. Мы друг у друга но каждый пытался себя выразить. И начиналась такая конкуренция. Он сказал интересно, а я попробую сделать еще интересней, но по-своему. И это очень приветствовалось всеми педагогами, личностное отношение к тому, что мы делаем.
The main thing which we could learn from each other was the experience, because we had all very different backgrounds. For example, I have just graduated from high school, so I was a very typical boy from Moscow, a little boy, young boy. Shukshin was quite experienced and came from an entirely different family from the village. Tarkovsky, before that, he was studying in another serious university and was working as a geologist. So what we did is we learned all those backgrounds, we learned different lifestyles and life attitudes, and the idea was to express ourselves, and there was some sort of a competition. So if he said something impressive, my goal was to make something even more impressive, and this was very much encouraged by our teachers. There's a question there.
Thank you. And also thank you for your terrific film, Mальчик и девушка, which I saw yesterday, and I think it is a terrific film. I was wondering whether you could spell out a bit more clearly the nature of the problems that you had with the censorship office and how you would see the impact of the film on your career from today's point of view. Thanks.
Ну, эта цензура, конечно, существовала, и знаменитое выражение одной нашей деятельницы, что в Советском Союзе секса нет, смешное такое выражение, это действовало, поэтому ограничения распространялись. На меня как подействовало? Я не имел возможности 10 лет работать в игровом кино. Это было негласное указание. Но я честно вам скажу, что я даже доволен, потому что я работал в научно-популярном, в документальном кино, делал то, что мне хотелось. Имея за плечами 2 художественных картины, я имел право выбирать, про что я хочу рассказать в документальном, в научно-популярном кино.
So, well, of course there was censorship. There was a very famous phrase once said out loud by a Soviet woman, that there is no sex in the Soviet Union. Well, this really was the general opinion of the authorities, and this was the main reason why the film had all its problems and restrictions. So after the scandal with the film, which I have to add was not banned, but it was released in a very limited... Сколько копий всего вышло, интересно, мальчика и девочки, примерно?
Напечатано было 2500 копий. Но сколько их шло, боюсь, что большинство было смыто и уничтожено, потому что прокат был очень ограниченный.
So, if a film was banned, then the director had some kind of a hello, and the film was too famous. So an idea was to screen as little prints as possible. So even though 2,000 prints were made, very little were actually screened along the whole country. So that's why the film was barely seen by anyone. And I continue what Julij said before. After that, for 10 years, I was not allowed to make any fiction films. This was not written anywhere, but this I just couldn't get signed a picture. But the thing is that I was really content. I was happy with that, because I was making documentaries, I was making culture films, and I enjoyed that because having made 2 fiction films, and there was a certain hierarchy in Soviet cinema, I had the right to choose whatever topic I wanted while making non-fiction, and that's what I did. So I was quite happy as a result.
Я потом вернулся в игровое кино с большим интересом, но поверьте, что когда на взлете, вот у меня 2 практически успешных были по нашим меркам картины, когда это останавливается, то человек приходит другой через 10 лет по отношению к этому виду искусства. Не та фантазия уже, не тот энтузиазм, и возраст, и слом просто внутренний какой-то происходит. Я стал спокойней, что, в общем, в искусстве не очень-то приветствую.
But 10 years later, I returned to fiction film. But you see, having made 2 successful films, because before Boy and Girl was banned, it was considered to be a success, I had to quit all of a sudden while I was still, raising, so to say. And when I returned 10 years later, I was a different man with a different fantasy, with a different enthusiasm, with a different age. And there was something inside, well, broke probably. I became more calm, which is what I don't really support in art. Maybe last couple of questions, because we're, I think, running out of time. Yeah, we haven't.
Just one short question. I was a little bit surprised by the final music of this film. Can you help us or help me how this music came up? Was it a method to save the film from its fate, or did I misunderstand this?
Нет, музыка не была никак способом спасти. Это композитор, с которым я сделал 4 фильма и сделал большой 50-минутный фильм о нем. Борис Чайковский, очень высокого уровня композитор, так сказать, классической музыки. Он симфонист, инструменталист. Кино вообще для всех композиторов, во всяком случае, у нас было способом выживания и заработка. Хотя серьезные композиторы, конечно, работали замечательно. Шостакович работал с Козинцевым, Прокофьев с Эйзенштейном. Борис Чайковский сделал несколько замечательных киномузык. И я к этому отношусь крайне серьезно. Я даже читаю небольшой курс в институте «Режиссура звука». Для меня сочетание звукового, музыкального или шумового решения с этой картинкой, с изображением чрезвычайно важно. Для меня это главный принцип кинематографа.
No, it was not a way to save the film. The composer whom I made 4 films with, Boris Tchaikovsky, not related to Pyotr Tchaikovsky, was a very important Soviet composer of the 20th century. I later made a film about him. He was a serious composer who composed symphonies and instrumental music. And for most of our serious composers, cinema was a way of, well, making ends meet, pay the bill, so to say. But there were exceptions, like Shostakovich, who worked with Kozintsev, and Prokofiev worked with Eisenstein. And Tchaikovsky was one of those who really treated cinema seriously, working not only with me, but he made some very important film scores. And I always thought that music is one of the most serious elements of film. And while I was teaching, and Julij still is teaching, one of the classes I was teaching is the directing sound. Because the combination of sound and sound effects and music and image, I think, is one of the most essential things in cinema.
Финальная песня, вы знаете, это такое ощущение того, что мужчины все-таки могут поддержать женщину даже не семейно, а просто по-человечески. Мне хотелось это сделать совершенно искренне. И сейчас я вижу, что она немножко неправильно записана, мне так кажется. Более любительское пение было бы больше к месту. Но само ощущение этой поддержки мужской, не обязательно конкретной, мне кажется, должно было существовать.
So the idea is, you see this scene with the 2 soldiers before that, is that the idea of a certain male support to this very independent woman is something which was important to show. And maybe I did it a little bit too strongly in the end. I would have done it a little bit more intimately, so to say, nowadays. But then the idea of this very male sound contrast to this very female image is what I had in mind. Yeah, I still have about 5 minutes left.
My last question, at least. As a young filmmaker, I wanted to ask you, like, of course, I'm not expecting for any advice, but did you have any mindset that helped you, like, for a period of life where you, like, could create? And if you were taught some kind of mindsets that helped you? Thank you very much.
Первый совет я уже высказал. Делать то, что написано. Вами ли написано, или написано автором, которого вы берете, следовать за ним. Не противоречить тому, что задумано. И второй совет – отдаваться этому полностью. Что со мной не всегда случалось, к сожалению.
So the first piece of advice is what I already said, that when you are making something that is written, that is, well, the idea that has been formulated either by another author or by yourself, you really have to follow it until the end. And don't contradict this author or yourself, if you're the author. And the second advice is, if you're doing something, then, well, do it to the end, sort of like give yourself to the very end. This is something which I did not always follow myself. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll have maybe one more question. Yeah? Ну, лучше по-английски, чтобы все остальные слышали просто.
Ладно. Thank you very much for the movie. I've seen it first time yesterday, and I really enjoyed it and really loved it. And I was really impressed by the lights and by the colors that you used in the movie, and especially the colors in the apartment where the Malchik was living. And I wanted just to know, maybe you can tell a bit about your inspiration of these colors. Thank you very much.
Меня всегда вдохновляли наши художники высокого уровня. А работал я с оператором, с которым начал работать еще в институте, и потом 2 больших картины мы сделали. Мы работали душа в душу. Здесь мы выбирали даже архитектуру, как в нашей советской столовке, почему-то арки, как на пейзажах Высокого Возрождения. Но это существенно было. Оператор замечательный, он снял несколько достойных очень фильмов, ученик Москвина, который был в самом начале немые фильмы фексов, так называемых. Это школа петербургская, ну, тогда ленинградская, один из основателей целой школы изображения в кино. Это, опять же, именно сочетание всех компонентов только они дают настоящий эффект, как у Тарковского с Рербергом «Зеркало», фантастическое изображение. То есть фантастический результат от совмещения. Для меня принцип единства и гармонии элементов самый, так сказать, важный. Как у нас в армии говорил старшина, пусть безобразно, но однообразно. Но гармонично, я бы сказал.
Just a second. Right. So I always try to rely as much as possible on fine art, on paintings, especially on Russian classical painting, not only of 19th but 20th century as well. And the cameraman Vladimir Chumak, with whom I've made 3 films, my one student work and 2, not this one, and 2 fiction films. He was a pupil of the great Andrei Moskvin, the cameraman who worked with Konstantin Trauberg, Fax in the silent era, and later with Eisenstein on Ivan the Terrible. And Moskvin was one of the founders of the, well, aesthetics of Soviet camera work, camera style, and especially its Petersburg, Leningrad school. And while I was working with Chumak, his pupil, we're really trying to to link everything. Like, for example, in the stupid, ugly Soviet canteen, which would notice that there are the arcs from the Renaissance, right? Which is what you really can see, but we wanted to put an accent on that. And so really this is, it all works when there is a perfect harmony between the cameraman and the director, like, for example, Tarkovsky and Derberg, when they were making The Mirror. The results are fantastic. And as they used to say in our army, Lieutenant, anyway. So he was saying that let it be ugly, but it should be in style. As I would say, it should be harmonious.
В картине цвет, в квартире, это атмосфера. В Ленинграде были такие квартиры, огромные когда-то аристократические квартиры, которые были разделены на клетушки, и там жило много семей. Ну, вы знаете, наверное, слышали, коммунальная квартира. Но в них сохранился, вот там бюст стоит почему-то в коридоре, сохранилась атмосфера. Вообще Ленинград очень сохранял всегда вот это некоторую аристократичность среди всех городов России. Он выделялся этим и произношением слов, и сдержанностью поведения, закрытостью некоторой. Это похоже на Ленинград, так я вам скажу. А один из примеров... Ну, ладно, скажите.
Да. So in the apartment, in Leningrad, in St. Petersburg, there were those huge apartments which used to belong to aristocratic families. But in the Soviet days, they were divided into little, so-called communal apartments. So there were several families living in one apartment. And but still there were elements of this former aristocratic pre-revolutionary life. And this is why you can see this sculpture, this bust in the corridor, which is completely out of style. And Leningrad always was the city which had those elements of aristocracy, of the old culture, which was a bit cold, a bit restrained, a bit, I would say, away, let's say, from introvert, so to say.
Последний пример, просто вот в фильме «Мальчик и девочка», когда герой просыпается в этом доме отдыха, он видит какой-то странный натюрморт. Это просто на столе стоит графин, в нем отражается что-то солнцем пронизанное. Это цитата из Петрова-Водкина, художник, которого я люблю, и особенно люблю его натюрморты.
So the very last example, when the boy wakes up in the sanatorium, the first thing he sees is this very strange, sort of like almost still life. We see a jar of water and sunbeams which reflect in this jar, which is a direct quotation from one of the best Russian artists, Kuzma Petrov-Vodkin, who is one of my favorite artists. And so this is one of those things which I try to, sort of filter my films through. Well, I guess that's all, because we are running out of time.
Я могу только поблагодарить вас за большое внимание. И вчерашнее на просмотре мне было очень приятно, естественно, что пришли люди и хорошо смотрели. Это не всегда получается. В зале была хорошая атмосфера. И за сегодняшний разговор тоже поблагодарить вас. И вообще за приглашение в этот город, в этот дом, в эту страну и к вам вообще в гости. Я хотел бы просто кому могу передать все, что я могу сделать.
I would like to thank you very much, for the way the film was received yesterday, because it was very pleasant to see it in such a receptive audience. It was, I think, very well watched, so to say. It doesn't happen always. The atmosphere was the right one. And I'd like to thank you for this conversation today and for my invitation to this house, this city, this country.
Есть такая русская поговорка есть: лучше поздно, чем никогда.
There's a Russian saying, it's better late than never. Thank you.